This video was made possible by the EA Creator Network and was captured on a work-in-progress build. What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing with you guys my preferred settings and sliders that I'm going to be using in each and every one of my college football 26 dynasties and rebuilds. As we all know, as we go through the life cycle of this game, there's patches and updates and tweaks to gameplay. The sliders are always being worked on, always being tuned. What you see here today is likely going to be outdated by the time we get a patch or two into the game, but every time I will change my gameplay sliders, I will fully update you guys. And I also need to shed light on the fact that I am just someone that plays a lot of the game. There are other people within this college football community that is what they do. They find the best possible sliders. Shout out Matt 10 and Mr. Hurricane use their sliders a lot in college football 25. So as they drop their content in college football 26, I will do everything in my power to kind of showcase the hard work that they do to give us Dynasty users the best possible experience. But for at launch, this is what I've kind of found through my time playing the college football 26 beta and during this early access period that I thought gave me the best Dynasty experience out the box. Now, these sliders that I'm going to be showcasing are based off of Heisman difficulty, and yes, we will be playing here on this channel Heisman difficulty. Enjoy our first snow game. When I see what the world record is for most picks thrown in a game, I will absolutely shatter this. But as I show the gameplay sliders, we don't have a lot of crazy changes right out the gate, but they're going to be different and probably feel a little bit different if you guys are playing on a different difficulty. If you're playing on All-American, if you're playing on Varsity, you might want to look at a different set of sliders. But if you're playing on Heisman, these should check out. Now we're going to leave Coach Firing on because that is the exact type of wrench that may need to get thrown into your dynasty. Be it you're a couple years in and you finally start underperforming and maybe get fired, go to a smaller school, maybe go back to a coordinator position. I think leaving Coach Firing on just makes that little bit extra interest on who knows what could happen, especially when you're underperforming in your dynasty mode. Now, on the build that we're using here for this early capture period, I feel like maybe there's something going on with the Coach XP speed setting. I had mine because now we all know that in college football 26, the max level that your coach can get to was 50 in 25, but in 26, they've doubled it to 100. I won like 12 straight natties, and I was level like 62 from level 0 during that time. It is incredibly difficult, even with this speed setting set on fastest, I think, to max out your coach at level 100. So that is a worry for you because it was pretty easy, especially if you would cheese the speed setting in college football 25 for your Coach XP. You could get to level 50 within 6 years, 7 years if you're winning a lot. I could say at minimum, if this kind of tracks over into launch, don't worry about the fear of potentially maxing out your coach at level 100 faster than what you would like. I think you're gonna enjoy the grind, I think, to put it best. I think at best settings, put it on normal, could go faster, and I don't think you'd feel it's too cheesy or not, but we'll leave it at normal. I want injuries on, a perfect complement to the wear and tear system. Pre-order bonuses. This is where you get like some coach points if you are the first coach on that team, depending on whether or not you pre-order the game. So having this on or off is purely personal choice. Now for me, one of the biggest additions to this game was the addition of being able to manually progress your players. So in last year's game, College Football 25, when you would upgrade your player and have enough points to upgrade your player, it was all handled by the sim. So very similar to like in Madden, when you turn on auto player progression, you're just at the mercy of the sim, what gets better. And a lot of times last year, because skill caps are a thing, you'd be looking at this and be like, I got a incredibly overpowered power move combo with Mateo Uiagalelei, one of the best players, one of my favorite pass rushers in all college football. I clearly, with 2 available skill cap points there, I want to max that out. So as soon as I get 9 points, because I have manual turned on, I'm going to go and upgrade power move. But in last year's game, you'd be like looking at that, you'd have that same thought process, and then out of nowhere, you'd be like, actually, we're going to spend all these points every single time to like bump up block shed, or we're going to use these to finish out the final 2 skill caps here on player IQ. So it was, in my opinion, very unsatisfactory to take away the option of the user to control their own player development. And I love that tweak this season to be able to spend where I want to spend, when I want to spend. But what better way than in the first like 2-3 minutes of a video to come with a spicy hot take? I think if you are in a multi-user league with a bunch of your other buddies, the temptation to cheese, the temptation to like always want to manually make your guy as fast as humanly possible, I think having the penalty makes sense. I think, however, for those of us that are just playing offline, you're playing by yourself, you're doing your own dynasty, you're doing your own rebuild, you can control how cheesy and or not cheesy things go. I personally am going to be rocking this at 0 because if I want to make a guy as fast as humanly possible and constantly just funnel those points in, I can. But then if it's cheesy, I'm going to get the downside of how cheesy it is by just having ridiculous one-dimensional wide receivers, for example, or running backs that are just speed. I don't think a penalty when you are just playing by yourself makes any sense because there are skill caps in place that are going to limit how overpowered you make a player, right? It's not like just because I have this unlocked, I'm going to be able to give Uiagalelei 99 strength. Like, he is not going to be able to hit that because of his skill cap. So I kind of feel like by putting an XP penalty on top of the fact that skill caps do exist, like you're kind of, nerfing your own ability for player development twice. And I just think it's down to self-discipline, I suppose, to turn that all the way off and not just every single time here, like I'm putting into quickness. I want him to be as fast and have as much acceleration and speed as humanly possible. I think anybody watching this, you're going to have, trust me, I believe in you, enough self-restraint to just realistically develop your player. If you want to make them all-rounded, you're going to be able to say, okay, we're already set with that 96 power move. Let's start working on finesse move right away. I shouldn't, if that's your approach, why would you need that additional punishment of having the player XP nerf when you're just, why nerf the XP that you're earning? You know what I'm saying? So I think there is value in having that turned on when you're in a multi-user league because you can't control, 5, 6, 10, 15 other people. But I think when you're just playing offline, I'd run it at 0 and just have a little self-control, fellas. For clock management, these are what I've always just ran this, be it in college football last year, Madden for the last couple of years. I like 12-minute quarters, accelerated clock on. You could go 10 to 15. I've found 15. I used to do 10, but I think 15 probably gives you the most amount. You just need to find that balance. The reason why, now this is 100% personal preference and how much time you can commit to your dynasty, but if you're looking at, and I think a lot of people would be looking at clock management to be, I want to not only play the game, I have enough time to enjoy the game, whatever, that's each individual preference, but if you want to try your best to have realistic rushing attempts, you know what I'm saying? Like, not just throw the football all the time. You want to be able to run the football and not necessarily just chew and kill the game clock off. You want to be able to have your defense out there for a realistic number of snaps and downs played to get a realistic number of tackles, TFLs, pass breakups that you're just not going to see if you're playing, shorter 4 or 5 minute quarters. This has kind of been my personal meta for the last couple of years, and I'm going to run with it in college football 26. One of the big changes in college football 26, and I love this, man, the more customizable sliders that we can get for features in this game, regardless of the gameplay, to just dynasty, I am all for it. I think we should be able to control absolutely any and everything that could possibly have a set of sliders. But this year we are able to control wear and tear. By default, everything is at 50. Here are a couple changes I've gone ahead and made. So knowing that these are all on 50 by default, I've gone ahead and added plus 10 to the hit stick impact. So that's when you lay the lumber or get lumber laid on you, it should be a little bit more impactful. I think if my guy just got absolutely blown up, Reggie Bush, Sheldon Brown style, it should mean a little bit more. Cut sticks, a little greasy. Anyone ever played football? I still have PTSD about getting cut down, but it hurts more than a regular tackle, so I'm going to bump that from 50 just up to 55. I went plus 15 on defender tackle advantage impact. So this is how much wear and tear gets generated when the tackler has the advantage due to physics and momentum. So a scenario that I thought, all right, so say I got, we'll go Isaac Brown. Isaac Brown, 185-pound running back for the University of Louisville, one of the best players in the game. If I get him out in space and I get tackled by, 175-pound man corner on the outside. Okay, that makes sense. That probably should be like a 50. But what if I take that same scenario and I'm out in space and I get to the outside and then we have Justice Terry, the 5-star nose tackle for the University of Texas, 330 pounds, and he absolutely decleats my 185-pound undersized running back, that should be felt a little bit more. And by bumping this up from 50 to 65, you are going to feel that a little bit more. I decided to also put up +5 here on impact blocks. If you get absolutely decleated or on the receiving end of getting decleated by a pulling offensive lineman, fullback, or tight end, you should feel that a little bit more. I did, however, because we are not just leaving this on default, there should be some bonuses. Like if we're going to make it a little bit more realistic and a little bit more challenging, you're going to take a little bit more wear and tear. I think we should also bump up the per timeout recovery to the wear and tear, the between quarter recovery, nothing crazy, just 5 points. I feel like a little bit higher than default, that your players realistically, when they have a chance to catch their breath during a timeout, when they have a chance to catch their breath during the end of quarter change, when they have a chance to catch their breath during halftime, those should be just bumped up and adjusted very, very slightly. And I've also decided to, because everything else is going to be a little bit higher, that in-game healing reserve pool for the amount of wear and tear recovery possible in a game, it should be weighted in similar to how much we have kind of bumped up all the impacts. So I think bumping that from 50 to 60 makes a lot of sense, and it felt pretty dang good for the couple seasons I've gone through already in College Football 26 Dynasty. Now the transfer portal. Now depending on what the transfer portal is, I don't want to say it's harsh. Harsh is not the right word because harsh makes it sound like I don't like it. You're going to notice the transfer portal a lot more, I think, in College Football 25 versus 26. These are default. I think in your own individual offline dynasty, no one's going to shade you if you want to kind of nerf this a little bit. Depending on your program, the deal breakers are legit. The playing time deal breakers are legit. You could probably get very sick and disgusted by the fact that if you have a very good roster, you're probably going to be at risk and feeling every bit of this 20 max transfers per team. I did a Georgia rebuild, just kind of testing out because they obviously are a little bit on the high end of the settings. Let's kind of experience the game from that point of view, not just always from a cupcake point of view. Oh boy! So if you want to shave that down 15, shave it down to 10, you just got, maybe I'm just having a little bit of a break one year. Like, for the love, my team is on lifeline. I cannot lose any more players. No one's going to judge you. But I also think, as intended, 20 is default. Why not embrace how they want the chaos of this game to be intended by keeping it on default? For user player transfer chance, CPU player transfer chance, again, it's all about, finding that balance. You might be able to want to leave this at 20, and then instead you could nerf your user player chance down to 45 or 40 if you feel like you're going into the transfer portal and they're not really populating 5 stars, or if you're kind of looking around, maybe more so in your conference because you're paying attention to those teams a little bit more, that are just like, my God, they have like 3 deep at tackle in every single position on the offensive line, multiple 80s, and you feel like they're just not, your opponents are not properly getting punished by the transfer portal. You could always increase. This was the one I was closest to changing, maybe bumping it up to 65, because there's a lot of times that the transfer portal, you're getting like, I've seen Dylan Stewart hit the portal a couple times for South Carolina. You weren't getting those roles in College Football 25, so it felt good in that regard, but then there's other times just doing the exact same, like year one, where you have the same opportunity multiple times in multiple different dynasties that I've done, where you're just not seeing that huge class. And like the way that you can almost equate this is like, think about Madden, right? Think about in Madden where free agency sometimes is not the funnest. Free agency is sometimes kind of boring because it's only old players. There's no realistic like franchise guys that are becoming available that we see in real life almost every other year. So like imagine kind of controlling those settings in Madden. That is how you need to view this scope within college football. And if you feel like the free agency period is kind of lame, kind of boring, you're a couple years in a row where maybe you just haven't had an opportunity to go after and chase some 4 and 5 stars, by all means you can adjust it. But for my opinion, it's in a good spot with these default ratings, but get ready. It is your team, especially if you're a big team, you started as like, a Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, get ready. You're going to feel the portal. Last little section here in team settings. Again, you want to get the full user experience of recruiting, turn that off. If recruiting's a little daunting and you haven't looked at the dozen of recruiting guides that are probably already going to be out there for College Football 26, you can turn it off. But I mean, come on, let's be honest. I would say the one little bit of strategy that you could always do, okay, now this is maybe a little bit of a hack, is turn off auto recruiting, get your initial board, maybe even get your initial second wave, and then say at like week 8, week 9, week 10, say you have all of your potential targets and you just need to add some depth. I don't think there's any harm in turning on auto recruiting And if you go auto recruiting week 10, right? You already got your 4 and 5s. You already got your big boards. You can let the CPU maybe fill in a couple depth guys, a couple 3-stars here and there. No harm. And that's going to help you maybe cheese if you're trying to chase your class ranking. Like say you want to, get a top 5 overall recruiting class. Kind of just turning this on late season might help the CPU get you a couple extra 3, maybe a 4-star here and there. But if you do decide to do that, the number one thing you need to ensure that you do is turn this back off as soon as the season is done, because you do not want to have auto recruiting on when it's time to get to the transfer portal. Trust me, I've done that before by mistake, and it was brutal. Auto progress players, you want that off because you're going to be doing the manual progress your players, and the same goes for coach auto progression. Have that off. Not only have that off, go check out my videos where I have already made 2 videos breaking down, in my opinion, for a Dynasty rebuild setting, the 2 best coach builds. One build is for a recruiting specialty mastermind coach, and the other build is for a coach to get the most player development, player XP boost that you possibly can get. Go check that out. Keep this off and just follow those video guides. Let's have a look here quickly at game options before we get into some sliders. I'm just rocking with these on default. I went default last year. Never once felt the need that these could be improved for me personally, or to look for what maybe be the meta settings. I think the only difference could be if you want that 100% gameplay authentic experience and you want to kind of turn off the assist for a heat seeker, for ball hawk, for auto flipping the play, for turning off AI wide receiver for user teams. You could turn these off here, but personally I just rock and roll with these as the game was intended. XP sliders are weird. For me personally as a content creator, I just think it's easiest to kind of keep everything above board and rock and roll with default 100. There were sliders that were released last year if you really want to kind of min-max and fine-tune every aspect of your dynasty just based off of years and years, and they throw it into an Excel spreadsheet and you see what positions might be earning less XP year over year over year. But generally, I think you're probably in a decent spot here turning it to 100, but personal preference again. I mean, sorry, not much of a guide help here, but if you just think your quarterbacks are developing way too slowly and you don't want to have to rely on improving your coaching tree and getting out of their abilities there, you can manipulate it with the XP sliders. But in my opinion, because there are mechanisms in-game to improve player development through leveling up your coaching tree, I think just kind of leaving these on 100 and then going up through the tree as the way to improve it is the way to go. We're going to finish up now with gameplay sliders. Again, this is on Heisman difficulty. I've kind of made a couple tweaks here, but ultimately, what better time than launch in the initial launch window before the first patch comes out just to enjoy the game on base default. There are a couple changes that I have made. Anytime you go above 50, for the most part, it's going to be a buff. Anytime you go below 50, it is going to be a nerf to make things a little bit more challenging. There were a couple tweaks here, a couple things. Again, it's difficult to get a true read because I've been playing college football 26 on the opposite side of the spectrum. I've been powerhouse teams and I've been cupcake teams, and it's about finding that balance when you're playing the game as, is my O-line struggling because of a slider issue, or is my O-line struggling because of the gigantic discrepancy where I'm playing as Oregon and the O-line feels good, and then if I'm playing as Hawaii and the O-line sucks? It's about finding that balance between what is actually a gameplay change that you need to make, or is it coming down to the fact of the quality of player that you are throwing out of there. So base default is 50 on all these. Here are the slight tweaks that I've made for my initial slider set, and anytime the game gets patched and there's a title update, sliders are going to change. I personally, I've dabbled in sliders a little bit, but I always look for the community. There are people within this community, usually about a month or so into the game, that come up with excellent slider sets that I cannot co-sign enough. Last year, I used a lot of Matt Penn sliders. He teamed up with the GOAT, Mr. Hurricane, and I thought that was completely better than what I was using at launch, and ended up switching to that. And if I do end up making any switch, I will 100% plug the work that they do, outstanding work that they do for a slider set. But here's what I'm using at launch, and it's been giving me a great time and an enjoyable experience on Heisman. All these aren't drastic changes, right? We're so early in the game, there just hasn't been enough time to get a full lay of the land. This is initial. This is, hey, you want to play Dynasty right away, get into a rebuild right away, check these out if you're on Heisman and see if you agree. For me, for quarterback accuracy, nerfing it from 50 down to 45. They did state in the blog, and it does feel like for sure that quarterback in particular, the lower rated quarterbacks in college football 26 struggle a little bit more than the lower rated quarterbacks did in 25. So I think to kind of counteract that, you don't need to go crazy and knock it down to 35. I think I finished last year college football 25 with this, my accuracy on 35. But I think knocking down to 45 is kind of the sweet spot at launch. We're going to buff up pass blocking from 50 up to 55. We're going to leave everything else at 50. We're going to nerf interceptions down to 40. This is usually a number that could see heavy sways. Last couple Maddens, even last year in college football, some people are rocking this as low as 15. I think a good starting point is 40. I'm still not getting a crazy amount of picks. Obviously, I'm also not going pro anytime soon, but I think 40 kind of balances out a little bit so you're not just getting an entire secondary full of players that have 6-7 sacks. From the CPU side of things, we're going to also match going from 50 down to 45 for QB accuracy. We're going to nerf the pass blocking and run blocking by 5 points. I still think kind of an area of like, regardless of the O-line or D-line that I'm going up against, when I'm a powerhouse like Oregon, my guys are struggling maybe a little bit more than their ratings tend to incline. So I think getting a little bit more balance, get a couple more insta-sheds every now and again to at least feel like it's even between me and the Heisman CPU that I'm going up against when I'm on offense or when I'm on defense. Knocking it down to 45 on both feels pretty good. And then likewise to the user, knocking CPU picks down to 40. I'm leaving the special teams all on default. Injuries is a tough one because it almost feels like random at times. Some dynasties you'll just get plagued with injuries and feel like 40 is way too high. And then there'll still be some dynasties you might only get, even with the wear and tear system, like no meaningful injuries throughout a whole season. So it's one of those ones. I think 40 on default makes sense. I think you could knock it down to 35, 30, somewhere in that range. Don't have to go as crazy as the last couple Maddens where personally I've been running at like 15, and I still feel like it's in a pretty good spot. But we're going to start at 40, leaf fatigue default. I am going to bump up the minimum player speed threshold to 55. This could go as high. I think the final Mat 10 slider last year had it at 60. I think I personally was rocking it default at 50. So I kind of think the sweet spot right now, the middle ground, to make fast players still feel kind of fast, but not ridiculously overpowered. And, you know, you also could potentially weigh the ability of manually upgrading players now, especially if you're in a multi-user league where, you know, you may have to still deal with buddies, just constantly making everybody as fast as humanly possible. You can combat that a little bit by adjusting the minimal player speed threshold. Now, penalties are an area that's, I will be the first to admit, kind of above my pay grade when it comes to slider sets. Any slider set that you use that's completely refined usually has some tweaking done to the different penalties. I don't want to say it's necessarily a myth. I trust the people that make this that say like all these different things are variable, especially when you increase and or decrease, kind of changes like the animation, stuff like that. But I don't necessarily want to put out fake news because I've never got that confirmation from developers. I would say eventually a really nice set of sliders will come out that probably will min-max and do all the hours and hours and hours of testing that you could change and modify penalties. So I would say keep things fluid at 50 and be prepared to change them as we gain more information. But I will say, if you know, you know. I always and can't have a set of sliders without turning off intentional grounding. It just, in my opinion, when I have this off, it feels like the opposing team's CPU is a lot more aggressive. A lot less throwaways. They want to try to attack different areas of the field a little bit more. And it kind of held true for my limited experience here in college football 26. Enough so to say, yeah, feels pretty good to keep that off for the time being. Last year, you had to turn off roughing the kicker because you just, if you know, you know again, where it was just the sheer amount of like, especially on extra points and field goals, short yardage, your CPU AI guy would just blast the kicker into smithereens and you'd be on the receiving end of a penalty. Feels like that's been definitely tuned and is a good spot at launch here in college football 26, but certainly can keep an eye on it. So there you go, fellas. Those are going to be the Dynasty settings I use in my long-form Dynasty series and each and every one of my college football 26 rebuilds for like the first month or so until this game starts getting patched. So check them out if you are looking for a set of sliders and you want to start off the exact same way that I am in my Dynasty modes. Always looking for feedback. If you personally have got your hands on the game, got some hours locked in and think that maybe there's a couple suggestions or tweaks that you have found that give you the best gameplay experience in relation to this video where it is for the Heisman difficulty, let me know in the comment section below. If you learned something today, you're going to be rocking these slider settings in your day one dynasties. All I ask for in return is like, hey, we're here, year 15 on the YouTubes, ahead of a huge college football 26 and soon to be Madden 26 cycle. Why not C4, you know? Strap that rocket. We'll see how far we can go this year. Hop on if you appreciate the video, you learned something here today. hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and until next time, it's your boy C4 saying make sure you stay tuned to that sub box. Plenty of more insane college football 26 Dynasty and Rebuild content coming your way. Stay tuned for that, and until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Love ya. Have a good one.